my last video, I discussed the 3 things I wish I would have known sooner about playing guitar. If you haven't seen it yet, please feel free to check it out in the link above. Everything I discussed in that video focused in on different ideas around how and what to practice, and you could simply implement any of those skills into your practice and become a better guitar player for it. That's all well and good. However, I think one of the biggest problems we face is the fact that even when we know what we should be doing to improve, we often struggle to implement those strategies into our practice. I think there's a second piece to the puzzle, and although I'm hearing it talked about more and more, I still don't think we talk about it enough as musicians. Now, mindset's a really popular buzzword these days. You'll hear it on YouTube, you'll hear it in books, you'll hear it on blogs, and you might be sitting there wondering, what is mindset? If you're new here, my name's Eric. I'm a freelance guitar player, music educator, and all-around music nerd based in Canada. And on this channel, we talk about how to get down to creating and playing more music and worrying less about the gear we do or don't have. So first off, let's talk about what mindset actually is. It's actually pretty simple. Mindset refers to whether you believe qualities or traits, like intelligence or talent, are fixed or changeable. Broadly speaking, this means that there's 2 mindsets. On one side, you have a growth mindset, where you believe that talent and intelligence are not fixed traits. You're in control of them, and that with hard work and persistence, you can improve on anything you're doing. On the other hand, we have a fixed mindset, and in a fixed mindset, we believe that our talent and our abilities are predetermined and we really can't do much to change them. Something worth mentioning is that I don't think it's completely black and white. Generally, people don't have only a fixed mindset or only a growth mindset. Depending on the task at hand and the area of your life, I think people can have growth mindsets sometimes and fixed mindsets sometimes. Even when dealing with a single discipline, such as music, I think it's possible for someone to have both a fixed and a growth mindset depending on the task at hand. For instance, maybe you have a fixed mindset when it comes to music theory. Maybe you don't think you're that kind of smart, or that it's just not something that comes naturally to you, so you'll never really get it. On the other hand, maybe you have a growth mindset when it comes to something like recording. Although you weren't great at it when you started, you believed that with hard work and consistency, you would get better. And you probably did, and maybe even quicker than you thought. I know this has certainly been true for me, and I definitely catch myself in fixed mindsets with some areas of my playing and growth mindsets with others. All that being said, I'm going to talk about some situations where I've learned to implement a growth mindset. I think these are 3 situations that almost any musician can identify with, and maybe you've even found yourself thinking the same way. Number 1, there is no end game. If you're approaching the guitar with the idea that at some point you're going to conquer it, you're going to know everything, and you're going to be a master, you are going to be sorely disappointed. That's not to say that you can't become a fantastic player. Something that I've realized in my playing is that as I learn more, I start to see how much I don't know. In an episode of Rhett Shaw's Backstage Journal from a couple of years ago, he interviews his buddy and bass player Philip Conrad. In that episode, Philip touched on something that I think about daily. He talked about the 3 stages of learning an instrument. Stage 1 is you don't know what you don't know. In this stage, everything you learn seems huge. Generally, you make relatively quick progress and everything's super satisfying. In this stage of learning, you're blissfully unaware of how much is actually out there. I think that can be a blessing and a curse. As a positive, I think this kind of blissful ignorance helps you to keep going and not be discouraged. However, on the flip side, if you're not careful, I think this can lead to overconfidence and an overestimation of your abilities. Stage 2 is that you know what you don't know. At this stage, you've likely put in some significant time and you're a fairly competent player. I think a lot of us tend to live in stage 2. It can be a little bit overwhelming because every time you learn something new, you realize that there's more and more out there. I think what's really important is to understand that it's okay to not know everything, and you need to be able to filter down what you want to learn. Remember that small improvements over time add up and make a massive difference over months and years. I personally find myself in this category, and I know I need to pay extra careful attention to how I'm spending my time. It's really easy for me to set out on one musical goal and then get distracted by 6 others along the way and actually end up not making as much progress as I wanted to. If you can do your best to just stay on track with one thing at a time, you'll see the progress. The 3rd stage is musical fluidity. To me, this is where you can hear an idea or you think of an idea and you can just play it on your instrument like you might sing it. Part of me wonders if you feel like you ever get to this stage. There's lots of players out there who I look up to, and in my eyes, they've completely reached musical fluidity. I've had the opportunity to play with a lot of people like this, and most of them suffer the same afflictions we do. They also deal with imposter syndrome, and they struggle with where they're at too. This brings me to point number 2. Don't make assumptions about other people's playing, and in particular how they got there. They say that comparison is the thief of joy, and I think that one of the most dangerous things that we can do as musicians is compare ourselves to other people. I think it's really easy for us to try and do an exact comparison of where we're at versus where they're at. And maybe we use certain metrics like how long they've been playing or how old they are. I've certainly fallen into this trap many times. When I see someone playing something I really like, I try and rationalize to myself, well, they're a couple years ahead of you, they've been playing longer than you, and it's almost like I'm trying to justify where I'm at based on where they're at. At the end of the day, this is totally useless. Things that we don't take into consideration are how did they get there, who helped them, where are they at currently in their lives, how much time do they have to dedicate to the craft, etc. In this age of social media, we have access to thousands of other guitar players, and we can compare ourselves to them in a heartbeat. Keep in mind that when you're watching that 30-second Instagram clip of totally flawless playing, that's probably not someone's first take. If it looks and sounds particularly good, not only have they spent the time learning how to play the part and execute it properly, they've also probably put a lot of time into capturing the audio and the video and all of those skills. I have a philosophy that you have to have put the time in somewhere. Even if that was their first take, how many years have they spent practicing their craft? I think the big takeaway here is that you just can't really ever know, and that comparing yourself to others won't actually make you a better player. Instead of comparing yourself to others, I think what you should try and do is be inspired by them. I think if you can get into the mindset of being inspired instead of being intimidated, it opens up the possibility for connection. This puts you in a place where A, you can actually learn something, and B, you maybe see that you have some value to share. When you see other musicians as your allies and not your competition, everybody wins. I had one experience this summer that really brought this idea to light. One of the artists that I worked for on the regular had just released a record, and because of COVID, all the tours were canceled. In order to promote the record, we ended up shooting a live concert instead. For the majority of my time working with this artist, I've been the only guitar player. However, with the release of the new record and trying to promote everything that's going on, there's been more budget and we've been able to put together a bigger band, meaning a second guitar player. And it definitely opened up the door for me to compare myself to them and where they're at. I think I have a pretty good idea of my strength as a guitar player, but I know my weaknesses equally well. This new record's a little outside of my comfort zone. It's heavier and pretty guitar-centric. There's also some pretty serious shredding on it, and if there are two things I know I'm not great at, it's heavy music and shredding. Greg, on the other hand, is a total monster of a guitar player, and I see him as being very comfortable with these two things. Going into the session, there was a lot of pressure. It was a pretty new band, we'd only ever played together once, and a ton of new material that we'd never played. Add that to the fact that we had to capture audio and video all in one take, try and look convincing while doing it, and there's going to be another guy over there shredding me under the table. It was the perfect storm that let me get in my own head. So fast forward to partway through the run through of the session, and Greg and I were working out one of the intro parts. We were just going back and forth on who was going to play what, trying a few different ideas out. Greg turned to me and he went, "Dude, how do you get that sound with your hands? I wish I could do that." I actually turned around and I looked at the bass player because I was so sure he couldn't be talking to me. Naturally, I turned to him and said, "Well, I wish I could play like you. What are you talking about?" I think this is a really great example of the fact that we tend to really live inside our own heads. Your ideas might not seem fresh to you because you sit with them day in and day out, you practice them, and you've heard them a million times, and they might be totally fresh to someone who's not familiar with your playing. So reach out and connect with other people, break the ice, tell them what you love about their playing. Odds are they're going to reciprocate it. And if you can see yourself as more of an equal to some of these people who you look up to, there's likely a really great opportunity there for everybody to learn something and feel more comfortable in their own skin. So if mindset was totally new to you today, I actually would encourage you to take some time, sit down, and evaluate where you fall on the spectrum of fixed and growth mindset. Changing your mindset isn't going to happen overnight. It's something you need to work at with time and consistency. Shocker. And I think it's actually really beneficial, just like in your guitar playing, to take some notes on, especially when you have a fixed mindset, and brainstorm some ideas on how you can shift that into a growth mindset. The goal here is to make your growth mindset the default, and to be able to catch yourself whenever you're falling into a fixed mindset and shift your thinking to set yourself up for success. Not only will this help you improve quicker, it's also going to make the process a lot more enjoyable. If you've made it this far into the video, thank you so much for your time and attention. I really appreciate it, especially in such a noisy world. If you haven't yet, please feel free to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, I hope you guys enjoy making some music.